Hi, my name is Damien Benjamin Sebuchian. I'm 54 years old, and my life up to this point has been an elaborate blend of misadventures which, when perceived from a limited 3D materialist perspective, may seem randomly absurd and meaningless. However, when I widen and deepen my perception from beyond the meat suit my ego believes himself to be, I discover a larger context where everything is connected by cosmic and quantum forces linked together by a divinely orchestrated series of synchronicities. From this zoomed-out perspective, it is easy to reject the polarization inherent in the scientific materialist paradigm that strains to define our reality through narrow chinks of its cavern. I am more than our society says I am. I am more than a homosapien with anxiety issues fated to endure a meager, pain-riddled existence of 73 average years on a planet overpopulated with other anxiety-riddled homosapiens with whom I have been socially programmed to compete against, fear, and loathe. In other words, I am not the physical body or the personality known as Damien. Rather, I am the one temporarily occupying and running the Damien mind-body complex. Like an astronaut who dons a spacesuit before he leaves the Earth's atmosphere, I had a reason for coming here. The astronaut's reason is not that different from my reason. In order for the astronaut to experience space, he needs the suit. In order for me to experience this 3D reality and everything that comes with it, I donned the homosapien suit. The big difference between me and the astronaut knows why he is wearing his suit and what he is supposed to do with it. He is working on the space station that orbits the planet. He has a series of assignments he is meant to fulfill, and when he has finished or his allotted time has expired, he returns to Earth and removes the suit. He knows his suit as a suit, and he knows himself without the suit. He lives his life on terra firma until he is called to space again to fulfill another series of assignments. I, like the vast majority of Homo sapiens on this planet at this time, have forgotten why I chose the Homo sapien suit, and I have forgotten why I decided to come here and what I'm supposed to do. Likewise, I have only vague impressions and ideas about who I am beyond the Homo sapien suit. From a limited victim consciousness perspective, it would seem that this amnesia dynamic is detrimental to living life to the fullest. How can we be happy and fulfilled if we don't know who we really are and why we're really here? Yet, if I zoom out, I come to the realization that the amnesia dynamic is just part of the game, and that from this zoomed-out perspective, I have limitless lifetimes to remember who I am and why I am here. Furthermore, each lifetime presents its own trail of clues, its own treasure map, so to speak. Imagine that the astronaut lost his memory in the journey into space. A solar flare had impacted his ship, and the electromagnetic radiation zapped the astronaut's frontal cortex, and as a result, his memory became almost completely erased. All he knows now is that he is a being on a ship orbiting a beautiful blue planet. Who is he? Why is he up here? In order to answer these questions, he must use the tools of his 5 senses, along with his reason and intuition. Using these tools, he observes and interacts with his immediate environment. Eventually, through trial and error, he may figure out how to use some of the equipment on the ship. The more he figures out, the more his memories start trickling back until finally the trickle becomes a flood and self-realization is achieved. That is how my life operates. The more I observe and interact with the world and the beings within it from a place of attention and presence, the more I begin to remember who I truly am. the more I recognize the patterns behind the choices I make and the experiences I have. Eventually, I will come to the realization that what I had previously thought of as my environment, a field of reality separate from me, is actually a projection of my subconscious mind. And the more I interact with my environment from that place of comprehension, the more I realize that there is nothing that isn't me. The answer to the question, who am I, then becomes everything and nothing. Why am I here? To remember that truth and to live from it. Like Voltaire once said, God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. That is how the 17th century French poet defined God. But he could just as easily be defining consciousness itself. And who am I but that? All that I have written, I comprehend intellectually. At the ultimate level, I know deep in my bones and in every cell of my body that I am infinite awareness in awareness of itself. And yet, when I woke up this morning, I felt a bothersome stiffness in my neck and a dreariness in my head. It was reminiscent of a hangover, but I hadn't had a sip of alcohol in over 5 years. Perhaps it was a latent hangover from karmic traces of previous drinking binges that at the time seemed to carry no immediate negative implications. Nevertheless, I began the morning feeling like crap. I wanted nothing more than to remain in bed for another 3 hours to sleep it off. But I had made plans, and people were counting on me to fulfill those plans. The gap between ultimate and relative truth is in direct proportion to contemplative and lived experience. The curse of this reality, as I have been experiencing it, is this. No matter how much I might believe in the ultimate truth of my existence as infinite awareness, as long as I'm inhabiting this homosapien suit and navigating this apparent world of form, that belief is perpetually challenged by the much more immediate and persistent reality presented by the relative truth of my individuated amness, known in this life as Damien Sibuyan. The astronaut knows that he is more than an astronaut. He's a middle-aged man named Steve, a husband, a father, an engineer, a Philadelphia, Pennsylvania native who roots for the Eagles, smokes cigars with his buddies once a month during poker night. He reads mysteries, and his favorite TV series of all time is The Sopranos. But while he is out in the vacuum of space, inhabiting the astronaut suit, none of that other stuff matters. In fact, if he were to act from his earthly identity and not his astronaut identity, if he were to remove the suit in some maniacal demonstration of his faith in that larger, more comprehensive identity, he would quickly be removed from both. In other words, no matter how miraculously profound it is for me to know that I am at the ultimate level of truth, infinite awareness in awareness of itself, that knowledge very rarely has any kind of immediate relevance to my existence. And if I'm nakedly honest with myself, it makes me sad. To know the ultimate truth and to be unable to live from that space of knowledge can be stifling and depressing. We have unlimited capabilities as humans, and yet this is the society we have chosen. I feel like the man in Plato's cave who freed himself and experienced reality in all of its fullness, and when he returned to free the others, they refused to believe him. I am like that man, knowing the truth, yet forced to live in bondage to the illusory world of the cave. All parents have had the experience of witnessing their infant child lost in a fit of screaming anguish. It's brutal to watch, especially when there was no apparent reason for the screaming and very little the parent can do to ease the baby's suffering. I've witnessed this phenomenon with my own 2 children and with other babies as well. All parents have strategies to mitigate the problem, and often those strategies will work. Like with my firstborn, if I put her in the car seat and drove around the block a few times, her screaming would usually cease and off to dreamland she'd go. But there were plenty of situations when nothing worked at all. This baby that you have sworn in your soul to protect and to nurture is wailing at the top of her lungs, seemingly in the worst kind of pain imaginable. And no matter what you try to do to ease your baby's suffering, nothing works. The only thing that can be done is to wait it out. Eventually, she will stop, most of the time out of the seeming blue, and then she'll move on as if nothing at all was the matter. I've developed a hypothesis around this phenomenon, one that, due to its impractical nature, could never advance into the experiment stage, let alone be proven. But when I think of my own birth story, and when I consider the ultimate truth versus relative truth scenario articulated earlier, it's a hypothesis I stand behind firmly. A baby is more than a baby. A baby, like every other being in the universe at the ultimate level of truth, is infinite awareness, in awareness of itself. The difference between babies and the rest of us? A baby is closer to the ultimate truth. In the womb, the baby had all of her needs met and was floating in an amniotic fluid-filled sensory deprivation tank that afforded her consciousness access to all sorts of dimensions and universes. After she is born, that consciousness is now trapped, seemingly permanently inside of a helpless blob of flesh, limited by senses that are at the elementary stages of function. Luckily, there are lots of distractions to keep the baby's attention busily away from realizing she is trapped. But every once in a while, the consciousness that is trapped inside the baby body realizes the prison she is in. It wasn't very long ago that the consciousness was free and unshackled by the stifling limitations of space and time. Now she is here, at the very beginning of a life, that when you compare it to the freedom of ultimate truth, must feel like nothing short of hell. Before entering this dimension in the form of a baby, this consciousness was a being of light, pure, uninhibited consciousness living in a dimension we have words for but no ability to actually fathom. In short, this baby I called my daughter had been an angel thriving in heaven. Now she was an angel trapped in hell. Again. That's why she was wailing. She was suffering the worst kind of homesickness imaginable. Separation from God's love. You would cry too, and you did when you were at that age. It is in that light that I share with you the story of my birth, from the point of view of a 1940s detective story. It answers the question, what would a newborn have to report should he have all the mental and emotional faculties of an adult, with all his memories of the other side intact? My first misadventure started on day 1. Case in point, I was born dead. And it was nobody's fault but my own. The first piece of evidence was right there for everyone in that hospital room to see. My umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck like a noose. Because I was the only one in the womb at the time, the authorities had only me to suspect. And because suicide is illegal in Ohio, I was interrogated by a detective who dropped everything and rushed to the scene.